Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Decryption and I hope you are well. My game at the moment has a small flaw that we're going to resolve in today's tutorial, which I am quite excited for. We're going to create a save and loading screen so we can make our own save files, autosave, manual save, and then we can load them from an interface on the main menu. It's going to be really cool, so let's get started. So there is quite a bit we need to crack on with in order to actually achieve this save and load functionality. But one of the key things we need to factor in is we need to be able to call save and load from any point in the game. Because you might want to autosave after a specific dialogue. You're going to want to autosave after you complete a specific mission, when you level change, something like that. We need a good place to call save from. Loading, not necessarily, you can call that from the main menu or call it from pause screen, but you're still calling it in multiple places. So we're going to go and create a function library to handle our entire game saving and loading functionality. And it's really easy to do. So I'm going to come into my blueprints here and I'm just going to create a new folder in here called libraries. And this is going to house all my different function libraries that I create, but today we're only going to create one. So I'm going to go right click blueprint function library, and I'll call it BPFL for blueprint function library, and I'm going to call it save game manager. So as soon as we open it up, I'm going to create my first function of GetBaseSaveGameName. And I know it's quite a mouthful, but it does make sense when you're deep down in it. So the way our saving and loading system is going to work is when it's creating a save file, or you're loading a save file, it will initially look at the first part of the file name, which will be SaveGame underscore or something like that. And that's what this part is going to work out. So this function is going to do two things. It's going to either load the existing save game name. So if you're in the middle of playing for 5 hours, you can go and get the save game you've just saved that, call autosave, and it updates the correct save. Or it needs to create a new save game name if you don't currently have one. So this is really easy to do, but the first thing we need is somewhere to store in our game the save game we're currently using. So we need something that transfers data across multiple levels. It's always loaded, you can't get rid of it, so we're going to go with a game instance. So in my blueprints folder, you can see I have my GI main, which is my game instance main. And at the moment, all it has is my unlocked contacts for my phone. So no matter what level I go to, I know which contacts I've unlocked. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to come and create a new variable called SaveGameName. And it's going to be a type of string. This is what's going to save exactly what our save game file is called. And I'm just going to compile and save that. If you've never created a game instance before, it's dead easy. All you do is create a new blueprint class, search for game instance and select game instance there. And then the last difference with a game instance, you need to go edit, project settings, and in maps and modes right at the bottom, you can set your game instance there. So now that we have that, we can instantly come in here and I can do get game instance. And you'll see it needs a world context object. So I'm just going to drag off of this to the left side this time and do get world context. And it'll create a little variable for us there. Then from here, I can now cast it to my GI main here. From here, we're going to check if the save game name has been populated. So I'm going to drag off of it. I'm going to get my save game name there, and I'm going to check if it's empty and add a branch. If it's empty, then we're going to go off and create a save game. So this is how you're going to customize what it is. However, if it's not empty, then we can really easily just add a return node and then drag from the save game name into the return node just like that, and it'll automatically create a pin like that. So you can see, nice and easy. If it's false, because we've already got a save game name, we're just going to return it like so. However, if it's true, let's go on and create how we want it to be saved. So for uniqueness, we can't just call it save game underscore and then manual or autosave, because then you're never going to be able to have multiple save games. It won't work. So we need something unique to be able to do it. So I'm going to use the date time. You could use a GUID or a UID, which is 36 characters of pure randomness, but a save file is really awkward like that and it's not conventional. Whereas a date is more conventional. So I'm going to right click and I'm simply going to type now. And this is going to get the current time now. From here, I'm going to break off of it like so, and it'll give me all the different values I can look at, which is perfect. Now, this next bit I'm a bit unhappy about, but you don't see it often, so I'll leave it as okay for now. I'm going to right-click and I'm going to add an append for a string, like so, and then I'm going to build this up exactly how I want it. So I want it to go save game underscore, so that'll be what it starts with, and then in each one of these, I want to add the correct pins. So I want it to say the year, and it'll add this in. And then I want it to say the month. So I'm going to do year, month, day. But then that's not specific enough, because more than often you'll probably add more times and stuff as well. So I'm also going to drag hour in and minute. If you want to go extra on top, you can also add the second while you're here. We'll just do it. It's not going to really matter. You really probably don't need the milliseconds. There we go. So my save game is going to be savegame_, and it'll be 2023, 11, 22, 42, I don't know, 30, something like that. It'll build it up. It'll be really hard to recreate that, and then doing it this way looks a little bit different, but it means your save games won't ever be overwritten accidentally. And now that we've done this, all we need to do is set this into the game instance. So here we're checking if the game instance has already got a save name. For this, we just need to set the game instance's save name. So I'm just going to take all of this just across a little bit, and I'm going to promote this GI main to a variable. So I'll just right click and do promote to local variable, and I'll call it game instance, like so. I can now connect this up, and all this means is we don't have to cast again, which is a little bit more performant, like so. I could even just drag this down here instead, like so. And now, up here, I can right-click and do game instance, which you'll see the blue one, and then I can from this do set save game name and plug it in. And then finally, just because we have now populated the save game name and we now have a save game, I can just copy the return node and paste it after here to return the save game name. So that means no matter what calls this function, whether it's a brand new game or an existing game, it will either return the existing save name or a brand new save name that we can use. That should be unique enough. And that's our first function. We're going to have about 6 or 7 functions once we've done, but they are all really relatively easy. The next thing we need to create is a way to differentiate between what type of save we're going to have. Now, realistically, there is only 2 types of save. You've got your manual save, where the player walks up to an object or pauses and goes, save my game. The other one is an autosave, where the game automatically saves for you. Thinking of a game like Skyrim, you can clearly see the difference between an autosave where the game has made the decision for you and a manual save. So this might be before a boss fight, you create a manual save, you try to beat the boss but he kills you, an autosave is now made, but you've now lost the XP because the boss has beat you. Whereas with the manual save, you can reload back to before the boss, which you might not want this, which is completely fine. I will advise you still bake it in just in case you ever change your mind, but if not, you should be able to work without creating it. So all I'm going to do is come into my blueprints folder. I'm going to come into the enums here, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go blueprint and choose enumeration, and I'll call it E save types. And we're simply going to add 2 save types in of autosave and manual. Of course, if you want to call this something different, absolutely feel free to. All we're going to do is convert these to strings later so we know what type of save it is. Perfect. So our next function in here is actually going to be what we name the actual file created in our system. So when we write the file, or when we call save, we're going to write the file to our operating system. Whether you're on Linux, Mac, Android, iOS, whatever, we're going to write the file. And we need to make sure that file is unique. Now this will cover in most instances the uniqueness of it. However, we're going to be reusing this for autosaves and manual saves, meaning we need to be able to differentiate between which is an autosave and a manual save. So I'm going to create a new function up here, and I'm just going to call it GetFileSaveGameName. Inside this function, I'm actually going to pass an input. I'll call it save type, and it'll be our new enum save type. So when we're saying give us the file name of the save, we need to specifically say what file type are you looking for, what type of save. And this one is really easy. So all I'm going to do is add a return node here, and then I'm going to right click and add an append for a string again, and I can just connect this up to the return node there to return it, and I'll just rename this to file name. We can just now reuse our first function here, so I can drag this in, and it'll say GetBaseSaveGameName. And now you'll notice it's got the exec pins here. That's what these little arrows are called, where you normally connect it up. But it doesn't actually need it. We're not doing anything. So what I'm going to do is come back into this function here, and I'm actually going to tick the pure option on the side here. And all this is going to do once you compile and save is just convert it into one of these functions you've seen around, like the append, which makes it really easy because I can just do that and I don't need to mess around with any exit pins or anything like that. And then from the world context again, I'm just going to drag off and do get world context. I don't know why you have to keep doing this. Yeah. And then under here, we just now need to say, so we need to say what type it is. So I'll right click here and do get save type, which will get this variable right here. I'm just going to drag from here into the B section here, and you'll see it will automatically convert it to a string set. And that's this function done. Again, I'm going to come and make it pure because it really doesn't need to hold exec up or anything. It just runs. And there we go. So now our save game will be savegame underscore year, month, day, hour, minute, second underscore save time. So one last thing I'm going to do is add pin here, drag this down just holding control, and then add an underscore here. So now with that function done, our save game name for the file will be savegame underscore year, month, day, hour, minute, second underscore autosave or manual. Perfect. Now this is where we get to actually storing the data. So in this next function we need to look at creating, we need a way to list all of the save games the person has on their computer, which without going into C++ seems to be very difficult to do from blueprints. However, based on a random post I saw on the Unreal forums, a really easy way around it. We have two save files. The first save file is a save file of all the other save files. It just lists all the saves. And then we can use that to go and get all the saves, and each individual save file stores the data about the game. Sounds complex, but it's really easy. All you need to know is you'll always have one save game list, which will list all save files, and then you have all your save files. That's it. So for this meta save list thing, we need to tell it what data we want it to store. So I'm going to come into my structs folder in my content drawer, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to do blueprint structure, and I'll do s underscore save game meta, like so. And I'm going to open this up. So thinking about when you're loading a list of your saves, so you want to pick which save game you want, what details would you typically have? So we would typically have stuff like the save name. So this is going to be a type of string, and it'll be the actual name of it. So it'll be savegame underscore the date. It doesn't matter whether it's manual or autosave or not. We can store that as a separate variable. So in here, I will call it save type, and this will be type E save type. So we've got what base name it is, we've got type it is, so we can now build up the manual saves to try and find it again, the file name. What else would you need? You want a date on there, so we can reorder it and choose the highest date. So I'll just do last saved. It'll be a type of date time like so. And here is where you can make a slight difference. You can, if you want, add a new save name of user defined save name or user visible save name. So if you want to give your players the opportunity to rename save files, so they could call it anything they want, add it in here. So add a new variable of user defined save name. That way, our save file on the system will always remain unique, and we don't need to worry about adding validation to tell the user they've added the same save as another save. You don't need to worry about it. Just add a variable in here, type of string or something like that. But I'm not going to do that for my game. Now, the only difference in here is because we're saving these values, we need to make sure that whatever weird thing Unreal uses, it knows how to compress it down into pure text and back out again. So we need to make sure it encodes it. So we need to make sure we tick this save game value here on all of these. If you don't do this, you could run into an issue where Unreal saves the value, but it can't read it back properly. This save game will just make sure whatever it writes it in such a fashion that it can load it back again. Now that we've done this, we need to actually create our base save file for the list currently. So to create a save file is actually really easy. It's a lot easier than I thought it was. So I'm going to come into my blueprints, and I'm actually just going to create a misc folder because I'm getting a lot of stuff here I'm not organizing and I don't like it. I'm going to call it misc. Inside here, I'm going to call it save games, and this is where we create our first save game structure, if you wish. So I'm going to come and create a new blueprint class, and I'm going to search for save game. And you'll see we've got this one here. This tutorial is not focused on narrative save games, so I'm not going to be looking at that. So just click the default save game there. And I'm going to call it BP Save Game List, and we'll open this up. So inside this save game list here, we actually need to define all the variables we want our save game to save. And realistically, we've already done that in our struct. So I'm just going to come in, add a variable of save game names, and I'm going to set it to our struct that we've just created, SaveGameMeta. And the reason we're doing this is because we need an array of custom objects. So there we go. So now I can simply come and make it public, so click the eyeball, and then make sure you tick save game as well, because we need to serialize this. And then in my save game meta, I will just set it to an array type like so, and I can hit compile and save. And that's all we have to do to create our save game. So that is our first file we're going to save, the list. So now we can cross this off, and we can jump back to our function library. And this is our third function. We're going to create a GetSaveGameList. Now this function is mainly going to be used on our main menu and a pause menu if you have it in there. It's going to load a list of all the save files we have on the system. So the first thing we need to do is actually just load the list of save files. So I'm just going to drag off and easily do load game from slot. Now there is one caveat with this that I'm going to mention now. There are two types of ways of loading and saving games. There's the standard one here, which blocks the thread from currently working, and then there's the async version. So if you've got an autosave and you're planning on having a lot of variables, you won't be able to use a function library for that because you can't use the async versions. So you'll have to create a blueprint class or something like that, a component, and drop that into your scene instead. I'm going for the blocking one here because realistically for loading and saving for me, I'm going to walk up to a bed, screen will fade to black. I don't care if it blocks the thread for a little bit, and my autosave, my game's never going to be very big. So it blocking the thread when I'm calling load or save is not going to take up a big thing for me. If you are expecting your game to be big, just do all the same logic, but do it in a blueprint instead. So our slot name, we know what we're going to call it. So I'm going to call mine SaveGameList because that's what I want my save game to always be called. This one file will only ever exist once. So I'm only doing a single player game, so I'm going to ignore the user index. If you're doing a multiplayer game, you need to get your player's index and just plug it into this. For my single player game, 0 should suffice. After this, I need to know whether or not this save game exists, because when we first start the game, if the save game doesn't exist, then it's not going to load anything. You can see on the comment as well, it says null PTR if load fails. Null PTR means null pointer, it means null. So just drag off of this and do is valid with the question mark. And this will tell you whether or not this object is valid, aka has it loaded. So if it hasn't loaded, then all I'm going to do is add a return node here, but I'm actually going to add an output here of our meta save game list. So I'll call it save game names, and I will set this to our save game meta here, and it'll be an array like that. So I'll just make it return an empty array, because that means everything we use it, if we ever call it, it will just be empty. If it is valid, now we can try and cast it to our save game object. So I'm going to drag from this return value and just do cast to our BP save game list like that. However, somebody could have made the file but made it corrupt, say they've tried to modify it. So we also need to check on the fake cast failed to ignore it and just return an empty list. It's been corrupt. If this point and this point, you may want to add some error messages, warning file corrupt, please warning your file is corrupt, something like that. But for me, I'm okay for now, but I will wrap this in a comment just in case anybody comes back. Warning file corrupt, like so. Now that we've casted to it, we know that this is an actual save file. It's got the data, cast to it correctly. It might be empty. We might not have actually saved anything, but it at least means it's worked. So from here, I can just drag off and do my GetSaveGameNames like so, and that's going to give us an array, which, you guessed it, we can just return like so. So that's it. That's all this one is going to do. We're going to load the SaveGameList file, and it will tell us all of the saves in it, or it will return empty if something's wrong. And that's it. Really, really simple. So that is pretty much all of our gets now done. The next thing we need to do is start creating these files. So because we're working on the save game list, and realistically we can't load the save game without having the save list so we know what we're loading, I think the next reasonable path would be to actually upsert is insert or update. So that's what I'm going to be doing. You could also just call it save game list, but save game list, I'm just going to go with update. But updates in this instance is going to create or update, either way. So this is going to be one of our key ones to actually create the save game list in the first place. So I'm going to need a couple of inputs first. The first input is going to be the new save file that we actually want to store in the list. So not the list itself, but the actual file we're saving within the list. So we'll have a save file of save game list, and within that we will have our save game _date_manual. So we need to pass this into here. So I'm going to call it new save game name, and I'm going to set it to a type of string, and I'm going to make sure it's a single parameter only. Next, we need to tell it what save type it is so we can pass it into the save game, so we can store it in the struct that we created. So I'm going to call it save type, and I'm just going to set it to our save type here. So the first thing we need to do is we actually need to get the list of the currently saved ones. Whether it's empty or not, we actually need to load that file so we can append to it. So I'm actually just going to come and drag in my GetSaveGameList like so. And it'll ask for a world context again, so I'll just do get world context, and it'll give me an array of save game names. Perfect. Then I'm going to promote this to a variable because we're going to use it quite a bit later. So I'm just going to promote to local variable save game list, and I'll connect it all. So the first thing we need to do in this list is to check if we're about to overwrite an existing save. So if we're calling UpdateSaveGameList, if it's a new save game, we need to just populate new values. But if it's an existing save game, then we just need to overwrite the date and leave it alone. So what I'm going to do is just drag off of this save game list and add a for loop in here. So inside this for loop, I'm going to promote this array element to a local variable, because we're going to use it later down the line. And I'm just going to call it current save game. And all this is going to do is be updated every single time in our for loop. From here, I'm going to break, and I'm just going to check if the save game name equals our current save game. So I'm going to drag this just below here like so. So we need our new save game name there. So I'll do get new save game name. But what we're also going to check is the save type. Because if we are saving a manual, we don't want to overwrite the autosave. We only want to save manual and autosave with the same name. So I'm going to drag off the save type again, do equals, and then we'll set this to our get save type. If you want a little bit more room, you can just click your break and click hide unconnected pins just to hide the middle one we don't need. There we go. And now we've got two booleans, so a logic gate we can add in of and, like so. And this will tell us whether or not this current iteration here, this current save game in our list, has the same name and the same type of the one we're trying to save. If it does, we're overwriting it true. However, if it's false, we're not going to do anything at all. We're not even going to return. We're going to leave it as false, because then the next for loop can come and come and come and come until we hit completed, in which case we know we've not found it, we can come and create it brand new. So next to this true here, I'm actually going to take the current save game here and the current save game list. From the save game list, I'm actually going to call remove, and it'll say remove item, and I want to remove my current save game from it. So I've got a cached local variable of the current save game, and I'm going to remove it from the array like so. If the removal has been successful, I can't imagine why it wouldn't be successful, but you know, maybe it's updated or something. But if it's true, then I'm going to drag our current save game in, and I'm actually now going to update it. So I will call set members in save game meta and connect this to the true. And you'll see we can't see anything. All you do is click it and choose which pins you want to update. Well, I know I want to update the last saved. There we go. So it's saying, what do you want to update it to? Well, the current time. So I'll just type now and update it. So now everything else in that save game will remain intact, the name, the type, and then maybe your user-defined name. However, the last saved will now be updated to a new date. And after we've done this, we can now add it back in to the save game list. So if I drag the save game list in, I can drag off of this and do append. I can do add, and I can connect the new struct out into it with our new date and connect the add up to it like so. And then if this add succeeds, basically, we don't need the for loop anymore. So we can just return out and do what we need, which will be creating the save file. So just down here, and I'm doing it down here because the completed all the way back here will also need to come to it. So I'm going to right click and do create save game object. And this is basically going to create our custom save game for our list. So I will do BP save game list like so. And now inside here, we start populating all of the variables that we want to use. So the first thing I'm going to do is just promote this to a variable, and I will call this new save game. Inside here, let's populate the array. So I will do set save game names, and it needs to be populated with an array. Thankfully, we have a fancy new array populated with our updated date, so we can plug that in. And then I can drag in our new save game object, and from this, I can literally just call save game to slot like so. Connect it up. So it's asking for a slot name. What do we want to call it? Well, we know we're updating the save game list, so I'm just going to come and set that into there. I know it's for player 0, so I'll put it there. Again, if you're on multiplayer, drag out and set it. And then what I'm actually going to do is add a branch here and just connect it in. If it's false, I'm going to print a message out, because if it's false, it means you've either not ticked save game somewhere, or you're trying to save somewhere you don't have permissions to. And there's some other reasons it might not save, but either way, you need to know it's not saved. So I will go for error, failed to save. There we go. I'll even set the color to red. There we go. So if it fails, it should print it out on dev. If it's true, I can just come in and hit return. Just handle a return, just so once it's done all of this, it doesn't come all the way back to the for loop and keep searching. However, the next thing we need to do, after we've got the save game list, is it's now looped over all of these, or it's failed here, whatever. It can't find the file. Basically, it's got no comparison. So we need to create it and tell it to add this new thing. So what I'm going to do from the completed here is I'm just going to drag in our save game list here, which from here could be an empty array. It could be populated. I'm just going to come and add here, and I connect it up to the completed. I'm going to drag off from here and do a make to try and make the data together. And you can see we need to populate it with everything we've got. Coincidentally, everything we've nicely got prepared up here. Very nice. So I'm going to drag off here and do get new save game name. I'm going to drag off the save type and do get save type. And then I'm going to drag off the last saved, and you remember, it's now, just like so. So that now populate our empty or pre-filled save game list with a new option. And then all we literally do is just drag this back to this same function here, like so. And move this down to make it line up. There we go. So whether it finds our value in here, updates it, and then pushes it to the save file, or it comes in here and creates a brand new one and pushes it here, either way, it will be saved. Just make sure you connect your print screen to the return here as well, just in case it's an issue. And we can save and compile. And that's our save game list done. So we're looking pretty good so far. We can now create our list, we can get the file name, we can get everything we want. So let's start creating the actual save game for our game, which will store anything you want. It could store your player's location, the last position, your money, your contacts, anything you want. So just like we did with the other one, the BP save game list here, we need an object defined to what we're going to save. So I'm just going to right click blueprint class. I'm going to search for save again, save game. And I will call this BP Save Game. And I'll open this up. So this is where you populate it with all the different variables you want to save. It sounds messy, but it really is completely okay, because if you imagine it, a save file is just a big data storage. It's like a struct full of data. As long as you can load that data, you're completely fine. So I'm going to come into the variables here. And let's think, I'm going to store my unlocked contacts in my game. So my unlocked contacts for my phone system is a name, and I'm going to right click it just to convert it to an array. The only other thing you have to do, if you remember, because we're saving it, we need to tell it to convert it, so we're going to tick it to save it as a variable. I'm going to also make it public and compile and save. Now you could just stop there if you want, add as many things as you want in. So I'm just going to do this one for now, but looking around my game, I could do the coins, I could do how many times I've pet an animal. I'd probably in the future even do which save place I saved at, so I can remember to spawn in the correct place. Go wild. It's everything you want. Keep it simple. I'm just going to go with the single one for now. This is a great place to store your player's name as well. If you have a custom thing where you can name your player, store it in here. Now, where this tutorial breaks off a little bit differently is I'm not focusing on narrative, because I know a lot of people don't have narrative yet. I do highly recommend it. Please take a look. It's a very, very good plugin. Not sponsored. So I'm actually going to build this plugin or this code in a way where you can tell your other plugins to save if they handle their own save systems. So some plugins will tell you to handle the saving yourself, which is completely fine. However, some other plugins, like narrative, it's really complex when you're trying to save everything, so it handles itself. You can overwrite it and do it yourself if you want to. I don't want to do that. Many people don't want to do that, and that's completely fine. So I'm going to build something into mine so it can also tell other things, now you save, and it will save them all as well at the same time. So back in my Blueprint function game manager, I'm going to use narrative for the test. If you have another plugin you need to save, you replace the word narrative with whatever you want. So I'm going to create a new function up here called GetNarrativeSaveGameName. So with narrative, it saves itself as a separate file, which I'm more than happy to keep. Some people don't like the separate files. I'm more than happy with it. So I need to figure out what name narrative will store on the system as. So I'm just going to do something really simple as take my exact save name. So savegame _date _manual autosave. But then I'm just going to do _narrative. But I'm just creating a function here so it's in nice one stored little location. So I'm going to drag in my GetFileSaveGameName here. And you can see it needs two things. A save type, which we can just plug back into here to add it. So what save type I was saving. And a world context, which I can just do get world. So that'll give me the file name of what we're going to save. So I'm going to drag off from here and do append. And this is where you can choose whatever you want to be in it. So I'm just going to do _narrative. If you're using any other plugin, which my brain's gone completely gone, I can't think of one, just add _ whatever. I'm going to create one function per plugin because I'm not expecting to use a lot of plugins. If you are using a lot of plugins, it might be better to set up a data table instead. For me, I'm just going to go this route for now. I'll just drag off up here and do return, and I'll plug this return value into it myself. So that'll just simply get my narrative's name like so. So now that we've just done this quick helper function to help myself out later, we can now start creating our actual save game file. Now I'm going to come and create a function called UpdateSaveGame. We just need a single input, which will be what type of save are we creating. So I'll call it save type. And then the first thing we need to get our game instance again. So I'm going to come back to my GetBaseSaveGame, and I'm just going to copy these three up here and the game instance here, because we do need it, and it's easy to copy and paste it in. All it's essentially doing, if you skip that part, is it's just getting the world context, getting the game instance from it, casting it to my main game instance, and then click create local variable, creating my game instance cache there. Then, just like we did before, I'm going to come and create a save game object. which is where we're going to actually store the save game. And I will open this up and call it BP-SaveGame. There's our save game object. And I'm going to promote this to a variable because we're going to use it loads of times later. And I'll call it SaveGame instance. And then from here, I'm actually going to add a sequence. I don't often use sequences because they can lead to messy code if you're not careful. But in this instance, I think it's going to work really beneficial for us. So the initial part is we've cached our game instance and created the save game object. So now we need to start populating this save game object with all the data you want. So I'm going to drag in my save game instance here, and I'm going to drag off, and I can do set, and you'll be able to see all the variables we need to set. So for me, I've just done unlocked contacts, so I'm going to click that. And then I need to get my unlocked contacts, which I know is from my game instance, because that's where I've stored it, but you can store it anywhere, player, random blueprint, as long as you've got access to it. And I will do get unlocked contacts, and I will plug it into here. Then I will get from then 0 and plug it into the set like so. So if you had more data, now is the point where you go and save it. So this is where we're putting the data into save game instance. So from here, we can now go and save anything we want. All we have to do is drag from the save game instance, copy and paste it as many times as you want, and then go set name or set coin, anything you want. And that will store it in the save game instance. The next step I'm going to do on then 1 is this is where I'm going to go and save my plugins now. So for narrative, because I know it needs to call save, I'm going to simply right click and do get narrative component. And again, if you're not using narrative, you just don't put it there. And I'll do get world context. And then from here, I will call save. And then you can see it's asking me for a name. And thankfully, as you saw earlier, I gave it a name with my new function of GetNarrativeSaveGameName. Oh, and you can see it's not marked as pure, so we're just going to go back into it and hit pure because it's just so much nicer. And then right here, we can just connect the return value up to there. And then it's asking for a world context, which we can just reshare this one. And it's asking for a save type, which we already have at the beginning. So I just do get save type, like so. And that's it. All you need to do is either keep going across or just add more sequences down, and it'll tell it to save your plugins really easily. So we've now got it saving our data and saving plugins. You can build this across, you can add functions here, you can add a function to your game instance or your player if they've created an interface with save and load and stick it on anything you want. It's really, really flexible. So the final thing we're going to do on the final pin here is I'm actually going to now tell it to start writing this data to the save file. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to type save game to slot. There we go. For the save game object, I need to pass it my save game instance that we've stored all our data in just here. For the save name, we actually need to get the file name. So I'll do get file game name like so. And now it's asking for a save type and a world context, both of which I can just copy from up here, reshuffle, and then bring down and plug in. Like so. Again, if you've got a multiplayer game, you can just do it there. Now, after we've saved it, again, I'm just going to add a branch and go and just check if it's saved it successfully. If not, then I'm going to just come and copy the print string from here and paste it below that with failed to save. Failed to save, and I'll do game just so we can differentiate it. And I'll just hit a return node here just to say stop executing the function. However, if it's true, it means it saved it successfully. However, this is now where we get a little bit funky with it. So we're coming in and we're creating a save here. But when we create a save, we actually need to tell it, in case we've created one brand new, this code doesn't care if you're updating an existing save or saving. If you're updating it, then you've already got all the data unlocked and you're just creating it again. So we actually need to tell it, now that it's saved, to go and update the save game list. And this will include changing its date and such. So just from the top of here, we're just going to drag off and do update save game list, which is our list of save files. You'll see it needs a new save game name, which I'm just going to come and drag our GetBaseSaveGameName into, because we're updating the list of existing saves. We don't need the file name. World context, I'll just do get world context. For the save type, again, I'll just do get save type, and then the world context one more time. And that's it. We can just drag off and do return. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the saves that will now come in. It will get our instance. It will create the save game object. It will populate it with all the data we need, all the plugins data we need, telling them to save separately. Then it'll come down, create the save system, update our save game list. Nice and easy. So the next step is to actually load the data back in. So we've now got saving and updating our list, and now we've got updating our save game. We need to load the save game. So I'm going to add our final function in called LoadSaveGame or LoadSaveGame. So this first part of the LoadSaveGame we need to actually go through and get all of the information we need in order to actually load the correct one. So we need to say, here's our game instance, here's what file we need to load, here's what type we need to load. So I'm going to come on this LoadSaveGame meta here, and I'm actually going to add an import of SaveGameMeta, and I'm going to set it to our s_SaveGameMeta here. So when we get the SaveGameList here, and it gives us an array of metas, we can pass this into the load save and say, load this specific one. Next, I'm going to need to get our game instance again. So I'm just going to come back to the beginning of here. I'm going to copy all of this again, just because I need to do it. I need to find a better way to do this, but for now it'll be fine. And I'll paste it into here. I'll connect it up. Then I'll just get a world op context again, and then I'll just promote the game instance to a variable. So at least have the game instance now. After this, I'm going to get the game instance here, and I'm actually going to set what our save game name is. So I'm going to do set save game name here. So when we're saving in future, we know exactly which one we've used. And then from the save game meta down here, I'm just going to right click and do get save game meta, and I'm going to break this and plug the save name into there. And then I'm also going to come back to my game instance, and I'm actually going to add a new variable of last saved type. And this will be our save type. So what this is going to do is the save game name will store the basic beginning part. So save game _date. That's it. It won't store the type on the end of it. But the last save type will store our type. So what this gives us the benefit of being able to do is you can start your game and go and create a manual save, and then the last save type will be stored as manual and save game name. So then if you run around, do a couple of missions and save again, then it instantly knows, oh, we're looking at this save file and the manual version, so we can go and save. Perfect. So you've saved twice now and it's overwritten the same save file, which is exactly what you want. Then you go and do a boss fight and it auto-saves. We don't want it overwriting our save file in case we want to reload. So at that point, because we're going to tell it you're saving but you're doing an autosave, then we can change the last save type now to autosave, so it'll save to a different file. And then if the autosave runs again, it will come and save to the last save type, which means it knows exactly which save file to go to. So that's why we're using the last save type there, so we can either remember which save file we've just gone to, and it also means that since we're populating the game instance, anywhere else we need to call load, so for instance when I call load on narrative, I can just come back to the last save type, and I know whether I'm loading autosave or if I'm loading a manual save. Now that we have this last save type, we can actually just come and populate it here. So from the game instance, I will just do set last save type, and I will plug it in like so. Now we're not going to need the date on the load, so I'm just going to click this in hide unconnect pins so it's out of the way. I don't like that actually, so I'm just going to drag the game instance in like this, I don't like the cross wires. There we go, that looks neater, doesn't it? So now that we've got all of our data and we know where the save's coming from, we can actually load the save. So I'm just going to drag off from here, and I'm simply going to do load game from slot. And then you can see it's asking for our slot name, and well, we've already got our slot name. So we need to get our file name, so I'm just going to do GetFileSaveGameName, because that's what file we need to load it from. The save type we've already got right here, so we can plug it in. The world context, I'll just do GetWorldContext, like so. So now, in theory, this should load our game. So just like we did on the list, we also need to check if it's valid in case somehow you're trying to load a game that doesn't exist. Maybe you've hit delete and managed to load it at the same time. It doesn't matter. If it's not valid, I'm going to print out, I'll just do error save file does not exist, because it could also be corrupt. That's the other thing. And I'll just do return. I'll change it to does not load, so it could return there. After this, we're just going to grab from this and I'll pass it to my BPSaveGame, and then I'm going to cache this into a variable because we're going to reuse it to populate things in a moment. So I'll call this saved game. And now, just like we did on the updating, I'm just going to add a sequence and I'm going to reverse what it did. So I'm going to go off and load what I need and do everything I need. So, for example, I know in my game instance, I can populate my unlocked contacts, so I'll do set unlocked contacts, and then from the saved game here, I can just drag off and do get unlock contacts, like so. So I can drag that across, and because my game instance will persist across all my levels, I'm happy to just populate it once and it goes across. However, if you have data you want to reload on your player, you'll need to find alternative means of doing that, whether you store it on the game instance or you store a reference to the save game on there so you can always load it. That's up to you. Then finally, on then one, I don't need to populate narrative from here, mainly because narrative only persists on each level, so I can ignore my plugins. If you've got any other plugins that persist across levels, you can load it now. But for me, I don't, so my final action will be just to open a level, and I'm going to do by object reference. It needs a world context, so I'll drag in world context. And then the level, for me, I know I just want to go to my main level. However, you could easily store the level in the save game and just instead use open level by name, where you just give it a string. And then you can jump to a specific level. And now we can compile and save. And that pretty much the saving structure done for the It's just a framework. That's all we've done. We've just built a framework of building blocks so we can do what we need. Now we actually need to start using it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a saving feature in here so we can use our framework to call save. So I'm thinking a bed. I like it when you have beds in games. And I'm thinking I'll put it in here. So if you run to the garage at the back, there's a bed. You can run up to it and click save. Dead easy. So I'm going to come to my blueprints, and in my MISC here, I'll just create a new folder called save locations, because I might have different ones, I don't know. I'll create a blueprint class of type actor, and I will call it BP saving bed. Inside here, I'm going to add a static mesh. There we go. And I have a bed somewhere on one of my random packs. I don't want it to be a fancy bed because you're in the middle of a garage. It won't be a camp bed. There we go. Yeah, that'll do. Nice pillow. So there we go. We need a way to interact with it. So I'm going to come and add a box collision. I'm going to resize this trigger box just so it fits the vast majority of the bed. It doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. I'll add a component begin overlap here. I'll check if it's the player, which in my case will be the first person character. And then I actually have an interface for interactions. So if you've not seen my previous tutorials, I have basically came and created an interface called BPI Interactable. And it has 3 functions on it of can interact, which tells you whether or not this item is currently interactable. For example, a door could be locked, so you'd say it's not interactable. Or you've got too much in your inventory. Get interact text is the text it shows on screen, so press E to talk to Greg, and then interact is the actual code it interacts with. So feel free to create that quickly enough. And then all I'm going to do is come into my interface here, and I will add my BPI interactable, and which means I can now populate all the stuff here. So get interact text, I will say save, so it'll say press E2, and then it'll say save. Then my can interact, I'm just going to say yeah, because I haven't built out into it yet. And then in my interact text here, you can see it's added it here, which is perfect. So from my event interact here, I want to make it a bit different. I don't just want to walk up, interact, and it saves. You might play an animation of getting into the bed and stuff. I don't have any of that yet, so I'm just going to simply add a quick fade. So I'm going to right-click, get player camera manager. From here, I'm just going to do start camera fade. And I'll say for 1 second, I want you to fade out. So from alpha 0 to alpha 1, the duration will be 1 as well. I'll fade the audio and I'll hold it when it's finished. Hold when it's finished means if it gets to the end, it won't revert it straight back. Then I'm actually going to add a delay node here, which is going to hold the thread up, but you're doing an action where your player's frozen anyway, it shouldn't matter. And I'll set it for 1.1 so it can freeze to that and it waits for a second. So next after this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come and create a function here called start saving, because there's a couple of stuff I want to do just for nicety on my character. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to get the player pawn, and I'm going to come and disable his input. So this, in theory, should stop the player moving around. So you're saving, you shouldn't be moving. And then from the player controller, I'll just do get player controller. Remember, if you're on multiplayer, you're going to need to tell it which player index to pick. After this, I'm going to cast the player pawn to my character, like so. From here, I'm going to promote it to a local variable called player, just because we don't want to be storing it permanently. From here, I'm going to go and get my own personal HUD, and I'm just going to tell it to set visibility to collapsed, so it's invisible, because we don't want the HUD on screen when we're doing it. And then after this, I'm simply going to call UpdateSaveGame, which is our special save. So I know this one is a manual triggered save because they've walked up, so I can click manual. And then after this is successfully piped out, we know the game's saved. So I can get the player camera manager again, and I can drag up from here, and I can do start camera fade. And we know it's currently all black, we can't see anything, so I'll say from alpha 1 to alpha 0, I'll say take 1 second. And then after this, I'm just going to start adding the HUD and stuff back on. So I'll get the player, and just set enable input, so it's enabled again. It'll need my player controller, so I'll just do get player controller, and that's it. And now with this function successfully done, we can jump back to the save graph. I can drag off and do start saving, just like so. Now we can compile and save. So in theory, we can now go and run up to our bed and save the game. So I can drag my bed in. You can see it's nice here. Rotate it round. There we go. So we can run up to that and save our game. but nothing's going to happen because we can't load it, we can't check, we're a bit behind at the moment. So the first thing I'm going to do before we move into loading the screens and stuff like that is I'm actually going to also modify the autosave. So for those who are using Narrative, the quest system, I created a master quest where it handles autosaving here. And at the moment, I just call narrative save, but we don't need that anymore. So I can delete this off, and instead I can just come in and choose Update Game Save. And then it's an autosave, and that's it. Now we have autosaving and we have manual saving. So the next bit we're going to work on is actually loading the plugins and stuff like that. So I did say before, when we were calling load in our save game here, anything that will persist across levels can just be loaded in here like the game instance. However, in the case of Narrative, the quest system, it won't persist across the levels. You need to call reload every time. So in my level blueprint here, I basically start my quest here, which I've temporarily disabled. So what I'm going to do is drag this across, and I'm actually going to come and get my game instance, and then I'm going to cast it to my GI main, and this has now got hold of our current save, so which save we want. So from here, I'm going to do GetSaveGameName, and I'm going to check if it's empty. If it's empty, then I'm just going to come straight from true and just start the quest, do everything I normally do. However, if it's false, then we know a save game exists, so we need to try and reload the data. So I'm going to drag my narrative component in my case, and I will do load, like so. So we need to tell narrative which is the save game we need to load, and we know that this is going to be from our GetNarrativeSaveName here, and then the type we need is from our game instance, so last save type, and we can plug it in here like so. Meaning if we last did an autosave and we've come back to this level, it will go to the autosave and get the data it needs. And now from this, I can connect the load straight to begin quest. So it will come in. If a save game name doesn't exist, it will just carry on the game like normal. If a save game name does exist, then it will load narrative and carry on. And at this stage, if you had your player you wanted to update or anything like that, create a function, tell it to load everything. It's that simple. So now we can compile and save. But again, we've got no way to load it. Now this is where we move on to the actual main menu. So if I jump back to my maps, I have a very basic menu, like so. So if you watched my last gallery tutorial, you saw I had my gallery images like so, but I need a new button in the middle. So what I'm going to do is come down to my UI here, and I've got my WB main menu here. And we just need to add the loading screen and stuff like that. So I'm going to come into my content drawer, and inside my widgets folder, I'll create a new folder, something like load game, and then I'll create a user interface widget blueprint, and I will go user widget, and I will say WBC for widget blueprint component. That's something I use, so I know this widget's never really spawned alone. It's a component. It's used on top of other widgets, and I will call it load game screen. And I will open this up. For me, it's going to be really simple because I'm not an artist. I haven't figured out what UI pack I want yet. I'm just building functionality at this point. So I'm just going to drop a canvas panel in. I'm also going to drop a scroll box in. And then for this scroll box, I'll just anchor it holding Control or Command Shift and clicking in the middle, like so. And I'll set its size to be like, I don't know, 500 by 600. Maybe a bit bigger, 700 by 1000. 700 by 800 there. So all my save game list will be down here. Then I'm going to need a way to get back. So I'm just going to add a button in here, just under the scroll box. I'll call it BTN back. And then I'll just use my anchors again, Control or Command Shift bottom corner. And I'll just bring it up like -100 and then 100 across. I'll add some text inside of it, and I'll just call it. I'll click the button again. You can see it's hanging over a little bit. It's not right. I'll just tap size to content and it fixes it all up just like that. Now on the button, I'll scroll down and I'll add my click event because we can use that later. And then back to the designer. This scroll box, I'll just rename to SB_SaveGameList. And I'm going to make sure it's ticked as a variable. So now if I jump into my graph, we can start actually populating this with the data we need in order to load it. So I'm actually going to come and delete all three events here because we don't need them. And I'm going to come and add a custom event called LoadSaveGameList. And I'm going to call this from my main menu when I click the gallery. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the scroll box and I'm going to clear all the children from it. So if we go into the save game screen, come out and go back in again, it's not going to double up all the nodes. And then from here, using our fantastic blueprint function library, I'm just going to call GetSaveGameList. It's that simple. Now all we need to do is just loop over them and do it. However, there's a small caveat here. I don't want to loop over all the items in the array. I want to do it backwards backwards. So each time we save to our game list, we put the newest items at the bottom, because that's how an array works, top to bottom almost. So we always add the latest ones to the bottom. So I want to render them at the top of mine so you can always see the latest ones. So I'm actually going to do a reverse for each loop. Now from this, we actually need to start displaying the code on the screen, the actual saves. And I want it in a specific fashion. I want it to say what type of save it is, the name of the save, and then the date time. And we can't really do that easily from here, so we're going to create another component. So I'm just going to right-click, User Interface Widget Blueprint, type of user widget, and I will call it WBC_LoadGameScreen button. And I'll open this up. So inside here, I'm just going to come and add a horizontal box, and then inside this one, I will add a button, and then inside this again, I'm going to add another horizontal box. So the reason we're doing this is the horizontal box is there to make the actual button go across horizontally. The button is here so we can actually click it, and I'm actually just going to come and tick fill, and I'm also going to tick middle aligned, and then I'm also going to add some padding on the bottom of 10, just so it pushes everything else below it just away a little bit. And then inside this horizontal box inside here, this is so we can put all the text elements. So I'm going to add 3 text elements, so I'll just add 1, and I'll call this txt save. I'll duplicate this as Control or Command D and call it txt save name, Control or Command D, and finally I will call it save date. So just to show you an example of what this will look like, the save type will be autosave. The save name will be SaveGame_2023, some hour thing like that. And then the save date will be 2023 of, 11/22, 7/31. Yeah. And then you can see it's going to look like that, but it's a bit messy at the moment. So what I'm going to cleverly do is see the horizontal box. I'm going to make it full width like so. Then I'm going to click the save name, and I'm actually going to tick fill on it. And you'll see it nicely takes up as much space as it can without being too intrusive. And then I'm just going to come and set the text to be center aligned like that. So now autosave is one side, save game is there, the date is there. So you might think it looks a bit far away, but if I save and compile and jump back to our load game system here, inside this scroll box, if I come and add our new load game screen button and drag it in, you can see we just need to give it a little bit more space. So if I click my scroll box and set it to say 1000, there we go. Nice little broken up space. But you can do anything you want with that. If you resize it, you can hide data. It doesn't really matter. Like I say, I'm doing it really basically for myself. Now inside here, I'm going to make the save type a variable. I'm going to make the save name a variable. And I'm also going to set the save date to a variable. And I'm going to come and click the button, and I'm going to add an event of onClicked. So the reason we've set them all to variables is so we can populate them. So I'm going to get rid of pre-construct and tick, and onConstruct will populate the text. So the first thing I'm going to do is when we spawn this button dynamically from our for each loop here, we're going to pass in the meta object to it so it knows everything it needs to know. So I'm going to come and create a new variable here called SaveGameMeta, and it will be our type of S_SaveGameMeta. And I'm going to make sure I tick expose on spawn and instance editable. Now this is important because it makes it so much easier to spawn the items later. So I'm going to drag this in and just break it. So drag off and break. And you can see we've got our 3 objects here and we can easily now populate it. So I'm going to drag my first save type in and I'll just do set text. You can see it's wanting some text. So I can drag from my start type. So you can see it won't convert it to a text directly. But what I can do is to string to do enum to string. And then I can convert the string to a text like so. There we go. Drag it all the way back. There we go. And then the next thing I can do, I can drag in the name and I can do set text, plug it in to the name there. So you can see it'll try to convert it to a string. We'll just let it do it like so. You could spend a little bit of time deleting it up a little bit. You could probably even put it in a function. Actually, yeah, we'll do that. I'll grab all of this data here. And I'm going to right click and do collapse to function and I will call it load data. So I just plug it into here. And now the reason we've done this is you might think it's a bit weird to do it this way, but what it allows us to do is actually unconnect this save one here and just bring this back all the way over here so we've got more space. And then I can actually copy this get and the break again because it doesn't really do much. All it's doing is breaking and exposing the variables for you. I can connect the save name to it just like so, bring it across so it's a lot shorter. And I can come and do the exact same thing for the date, but unfortunately, if you remember when we created the date, it is a little bit awkward in Unreal to populate the date. It's not massively awkward, it's just, you have to do it. So from this text, I'm going to choose format, and then from this last saved, I'm going to choose break. And some other countries have weird styling according to the UK people. I don't know. So I'm going to put a colon whenever I want a variable and I'm going to do a curly brace and type day and close it with a curly brace. And I'll do slash and I'll do month and I'll do another slash, year, close it, and then I'll do a space and I'll open another one and do hour, colon, min, colon, and then finally set. And you can see it's created all these variables here. So all I have to do is drag all these in. There will be a little crossing here and there, but it doesn't matter. As long as you can figure out roughly what it's doing, it's not the worst thing in the world. Like so. So there's a little bit of crossing, but the only way you can reshuffle these is by reshuffling that, and that's not what you want. Then I can drag this across, and that's it. So it sets all the text up just like that. So we can come back to the event graph. That'll load the data. And when the button's clicked, we just need to tell the loading screen game here, we've clicked the button, load the game. So I'm actually just going to come and create an event dispatcher just on the side here called onClicked. I'm going to add an input here called button, and it'll be a type of itself. So WVC load game screen button. And now you'll see we can drag this on clicked out and do call, and then we can connect it up. And from the button, we can just drag up and do self. And that's our button done. We can save and compile. We can now cross this off because we're done with it. And on here, we can drag from the loop body and do create widget. The class will be our save button, will be our load button. And you can see, because we've ticked instance, editable, and spawn on save, we can just connect it right there. So much easier. Then finally, I'm going to drag the SBSaveGameList in. And now we'll do add child, which is RSB is our scroll box. I can connect it up and the return value to content like so. Finally, we added an event dispatcher. So when we click it, I can drag from this return value and I can do assign on clicked like so. And now this is the event what will be called when this button is clicked. And because it's in a loop, it will create multiples of these events hidden in the background. So you know exactly which button was clicked. So I can get this button from here. I can do GetSaveGameMeta. And then finally, as simple as it really is, I can do load game save, just like that. So that will handle loading the game and transitioning us to a new world. So the last thing we need to do is just populate the main menu. So I need a new button. So I'm going to come to my buttons here. I'll add a new button by Control or Command D, the gallery, btn, load game. I actually want it above the gallery. There we are. And I'll change the text to load game. There we go. This load map 1 I don't like, so I'll type new game because that's pretty much what it's doing. And then I'll come and set these to black just because it looks horrible, white on white. And I'm going to do the same for the buttons actually. Slight tangent, but white on white never looks good. There we go. Like I say, with a proper UI designer, you'll be fine. There we go. So back on the main menu, I can now click my load game button, scroll down, I can add a click event. And then as you know, if you've watched any of my previous tutorials, I'm a big fan of the widget switcher. So here you can see as you click down the widget switcher, it's just a component in here. So you can see as you click down, it will change your screens really easily. So I've got my gallery, I've got my main menu button. And if I go and fetch my load screen, I can add that in. You can see I've now got a load screen. It's not loading yet. We have to start the game first. But I need to tell the widget switcher to actually change to it. So just inside here, I can get my widget switcher. I can set the active widget index. And I'll set it to 2 because it starts at 0. So 0, 1, 2. And then the final thing I need to do is actually tell it to load the data. So I'll just come in and say load save game list. So the final thing I'll do is come to the back button and I'll click on clicked. You can see we've added it here. So I actually need to get access to the parent menu so I can change the widget switcher. So I'm just going to come in here and type parent menu. I'll set it to a type of WB main menu. I'll drag this in. And then from here, I'll just come and get the widget switcher. And then I'll just set active widget index. And I'll set it back to 0. So if you click back, it'll take you back to the main menu. Now for the load screen, we just need to populate the back button's parent menu. So from the WB load screen, I will do set parent, and then from here, I will just do self. So the widget itself knows how to get back, and that should be it, ladies and gentlemen. That is everything we need to do. And now when we start it, you can come to load game. You can see we've got nothing because we haven't done anything. That's fine. I can come and click new game. So my game has started. I can run up to say, let's, I don't know, speak to Hiroshi. So I can skip through his dialogue. Okay, right. Oh, I need to go to work, whatever, you know. So I'm going to come and save the game. So I'm going to run to the nearest save point, and you can see here, I'll press E to save, you'll see it'll fade out, and it'll fade back in, and it was that quick. So in theory, if I jump back to my main menu, which I've got a little trigger here to do so, I can click load game. There we go, ladies and gentlemen, our manual save. The day before this video is meant to go live, because it took a lot longer to figure out. So I can come and click back and I can click new game again. And you can see we've got a totally fresh game. Narrative hasn't loaded. My contacts, I've not really built the system in properly yet, so that's fine. I can come in here, go back to the main menu. I can click load game and click load on my manual save. it will now load the game. You can see one of my quests have been completed. It's working, ladies and gentlemen. So let's come and talk to Rusty. Skip through his dialogue. Oh, and then you can see my glitch. So I've done 2 out of 4. So you can see, just to test it, I'll escape out. We've done 2 out of 4. We didn't save it, so I can come and click load game. There's our file again. Oh, it's so cool. I love when things work. Come back into the game. 1 out of 4 because that's the last point we saved. Hiroshi can't be talked to anymore. There's a glitch that is showing, but yeah. I can go and talk to Rusty. There we go, 2 out of 4. Let's go and save again. So you can see if I come and save now, save, fade to black, bang, straight back on. It's that quick. It will get slower. It's just fact, it will happen. But if I come back now, in fact, I'm not even going to go to menu. I'm going to skip the game and I'm going to come back into it. And we've just saved twice on the same save. We've only got 1 save, but you can see it's now updated the date. Perfect. I don't know why it adds a comma. That's something to do with Unreal. If you load it, it should say who racers talk to. Fantastic. So now let's test the auto-saving. So if I run up to the Nakamura twins and talk to them, they'll ask me to do a little quest for them. And after I finish this quest, it will auto-save. So let's sabotage Rusty's truck. There we go. His engine, which is apparently in the back, but it's not. It's at the front. So I'll come in, complete it, and we'll say we have done Rusty's car. Oh, no, that's the car losses. There we go. And then it's saved. We could add a little icon spinner and stuff. That's a future plan that I'll look at doing. I haven't done it yet. But now if I run down here or skip the game any way you want to, I'm just going to come to here. Start the main menu, load. I've got an autosave and it's at the top. So the autosave is when I finish the quest for the Nakamura twins. The manual, the quest isn't finished yet. So we can test this. So if I go into autosave, the game is loaded. 3 out of 4 people because I've spoke to the Nakamura twins. If I speak to them again, I can't. I've already done the quest. But if I leave and go back into it, click load game, click manual, and now I can come and speak to the Nakamura twins. You can see it's already gone down on the count and we're back talking to them again. How cool is that? The next test, if I come and click load game and click autosave, I will come down here. I've already completed the quest for Nakamura twins, so let's do another autosave quest. So I will come and speak to Carlos, and he'll say, please get me my car parts. So I'm going to run around all of these and collect his 3 parts. A tutorial is already on my channel if you want to figure out how to do this. I'll miss that trigger to the open point, and I'll collect the turbocharger, and then finally I will go back to Carlos, and it will autosave. Bang, done. Just like that, autosave has now been hit. So if I skip it and come back in, load game, autosave is still at the top, it's got a new date on it. If I start it, you can see it's still saying 3 out of 4, but if I can speak to Carlos now, the quest has been completed. How cool is that, ladies and gentlemen? A proper saving and loading system with a screen, everything. The final test I'll do, I'll come and click new game. I've decided I like those ones, but just like you do with Fallout and Skyrim, I'm going to start again. And this time, I'm going to speak to Tyler. Oh, I don't like Tyler. Yeah. My game, I don't know, maybe you speak to people in specific ways and you change. I don't like Tyler, but we'll save this. Maybe I'm doing a bad guy playthrough. I'll come and do a manual save, just like that. Bang, it's done, that quick. So if I come back to the main menu now, load game, you can see we have the latest manual and the previous manual. If I click the previous manual, I have my 2 out of 4 races. If I come back in and click the newest manual, I have 1 out of 4. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. A proper save and load system. How cool is that? And there's so much you can do to it as well. You could easily make these not buttons and make them checkboxes or something, so when you click it, it shows a screenshot next to it. You could save the screenshot of the latest level with it really, really easily. You can add delete buttons next to it if you want to delete them out. That's all built in as well. All you simply have to do is just call delete game in slot, give it the file name which you already have, and that's it, it'll be gone. You can add the ability, like I discussed earlier, to rename your save files, call it whatever you want. You can, using the GetFileSaveGameList, since everything is driven through here, and the base save file, you can change your save files to anything you want. The only caveat is just make sure it's something that won't overwrite it. Because if you have player 1 come on and say my name is Alfie, and then you forget about it, come back 3 weeks later, and make a new character called Alfie, it will overwrite the old one. So you just need to be careful with that. But apart from that, thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this was useful. I know it's super useful for me, and I'm going to be using it in projects. Any changes you would make to it, let me know. Any requests you would like to see, please let me know in the comments below. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.